that eat, pray, love mentality of running off to find yourself or to find life's meaning is a bit of a romanticized fantasy, in my opinion.
I got a glitch. Oh, it just
Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Ash, your truth-bombing fairy godmother for everything love, dating, and relationships. Today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual because so much of my content is catered towards being on the receiving end of breakups or trying to heal post-breakup or other topics along those lines. However, one of you asked if I could do a video on being on the flip side of these situations. So what if you are in a relationship, but you are the one considering ending things? How do you know if breaking up with your partner is the right choice? I'm going to share my thoughts on this one and also some things that I think are worth considering before you decide to end a relationship. But first, if you think you could benefit from new love, dating, and relationship videos every single week, then I highly suggest you consider subscribing to my channel by tapping that button below. I'm going to first start out by discussing being in a relationship that is just not quite working that well or has become quite dysfunctional or unhealthy in some way. Doesn't mean that the relationship is necessarily toxic and that there are no major underlying red flag issues such as any type of abuse or major trust issues or infidelity, but for whatever reason, there's a bit of conflict that's happening and the relationship is just not working out great. And then once I've discussed the more dysfunctional relationship scenarios and the process of assessing whether or not you should leave that type of relationship, I'll then move on to discussing whether or not you should leave a more healthy, loving, stable relationship. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so if you are in a more dysfunctional relationship, what I want you to firstly ask yourself is if the issues that you're experiencing are flexible and workable. And further, if you are motivated to actually put in the work to resolve these issues. If both parties are fully committed and motivated to put in the work to potentially resolve these issues, perhaps even with the assistance of a professional, then I would absolutely see those issues as both workable and flexible. And if they're not, that's something that professional counseling or therapy can really help give you the answer to sooner rather than later. However, as I mentioned before, you and your partner have to be motivated to really put in the work to get things back on track. And if you feel you are at a place where you are just not truly interested and really giving it your all to work on these persistent issues or conflicts, then I really invite you to tune in and ask yourself why that is. Because you're absolutely not wrong for feeling that way, but understanding why can really give you some guidance. For example, do you feel in your heart that finding someone who is more aligned to yourself is a more loving choice for you? Do you see working on these issues as not really worth your time and effort in the long term? What is it about really rolling up your sleeves and putting in the work are you feeling turned off by? Getting those answers can really help give you some clarity on what the best choice for you is. But that's another point I just want to quickly stress here. When it comes to ending a relationship, there really isn't a right or wrong choice. I want you to think of it as more as a left or a right turn or a fork in the road as opposed to right or wrong. It really just comes down to what is the most loving choice for you or what really fits in with your current and long-term needs. And before moving on to more functional, healthy, or less problematic relationships, I just want to touch on something that I think is relevant and applicable to all relationships, which is the concept of the 80-20 rule. You are never going to get 100% of everything that you desire in an ideal, perfect partner. We are all imperfect, flawed humans, and there will always be certain things that we must compromise on to a degree. Therefore, the 80-20 rule basically states that you should aim to get 80% of your desires and needs met by your romantic partner, and also be willing to accept that no matter who on earth you are with, there will always be at least 20% that you will not get fulfilled by them. However, when we are in the midst of conflict or certain stressors, or we're just going through a rough patch in our relationship, it becomes very, very easy to see things in a very catastrophic way, in that all we can see are all the things that we aren't getting from our partners, or all the boxes that they don't check, as opposed to all of the ones that they do. So all we can focus on is that missing 20% instead of that 80% that they actually do fulfill. And further, when we are stuck in that mindset, we may come across other people in our lives that we see that missing 20% with. So for example, say your partner lacks spontaneity, so you recognize that spontaneity with someone else, and as a result, you're tricked into thinking that that other person is that full, complete, 100% package. But what you're not seeing is that remaining 80% that the spontaneous person doesn't have or wouldn't be able to give you that your current partner very much does. So the point being with this rule is that you have to let go of the idea that there is a 100% perfect match for you out there. That just isn't reality, and it's entirely unfair to expect your partner to tick every single box that you have. And it can really help put things in perspective if you actually sit down and make a list of all the wonderful qualities that your partner does have, or all of the needs that they do meet, and then maybe some of the ones that they don't, so that you can determine whether or not that 80-20 criteria is actually being met. Now, let's move on to those relationships that we know that there is nothing wrong or nothing more that we could ask for, yet for some reason we just feel unhappy and we're wondering if ending things is the right call. And let me just start off by saying that truly loving, healthy relationships with good, trustworthy, loyal people are honestly hard to come by. And if you've been fortunate enough to find one of those relationships, I just really encourage you to think deeply about letting it go. And this is the exact type of scenario that my subscriber who originally wrote to me about covering this topic was in. He said he was in a wonderfully loving relationship with a fantastic woman, but that he just didn't feel happy and felt as though he needed to be by himself. And this is a really tricky situation, and one that I actually relate to a lot, which is why I wanted to talk about it. There is a really common misconception out there, I think in partly due to movies and media and various romanticized stories about this, that finding yourself type work has to be done alone, and that you can't be in a committed romantic relationship with someone while also doing your own internal work. And this could not be further from the truth. In fact, in my personal opinion, so long as you are in a relationship with someone who really supports and understands you and is willing to both hold your hand yet also give you some space when needed to work some things out and figure some things out for yourself, being in a loving relationship while also doing your own internal individual work can be even more successful than trying to go it alone. In my personal experience, I learned far, far more about myself and my wounds and my fears, and importantly, how to bring healing to those things with my partner by my side than I was ever able to do by myself. There is something so uniquely profound about being in a relationship with a truly safe, stable, loving person in which that type of connection can sort of act like a mirror reflecting things back to you. The way we project all our pain and wounding onto this other person sort of shines a light on where we have some work to do within ourselves in a way that is really hard to replicate by yourself. And I think this is why so many of us feel that urge to just run away and be alone in an otherwise healthy, loving relationship, because honestly, being alone can be a lot easier, especially for us anxious avoidant attachment types. There were times I seriously contemplated ending things with my fiance because I felt like doing the work alone was the easier route, and it probably would have been. There is something about being so close and vulnerable with another human and being held accountable by them that can be really scary, uncomfortable, anxiety provoking, and even suffocating at times. But of course, that all being said, I'm not saying that my choice to stay in my relationship is right for everyone, but I want you to at least consider that the choice to stay or go is there for you too. That eat, pray, love mentality of running off to find yourself or to find life's meaning is a bit of a romanticized fantasy, in my opinion. And in fact, sometimes I see doing that as a way to continue avoiding doing the work that perhaps needs to be done. But no hate to the author of that book, of course. I'm just trying to give you things to consider here. And in the case of my subscriber who originally wrote me about this topic, he sounded really confident that being alone was the most loving choice for him, and that he was just not in a place to be able to both do the work that he needed and wanted to do while also maintaining his relationship. And that is totally okay too. That is a decision that you are entirely allowed to make. And if you too just know at your core that you do not have it in you to give both yourself and your relationship the time and energy that they require, then I think that you should feel empowered in your choice to leave and focus on yourself. And finally, before I go, one more thing I want to invite you to consider is that when we are feeling unhappy or unfulfilled about ourselves and within our own lives, the first place we project that onto is our partner and our relationship with them. If we're feeling lackluster about and within ourselves, that is absolutely going to bleed across into our romantic relationship. And when that happens, it's really easy to think that the problem is the relationship when it really isn't. So if that's an experience that you identify with, I really encourage you to prioritize reinvesting in yourself and figuring out what it is that you need to feel more fulfilled within yourself. And if that's how you're feeling, please let your partner know. Let them in on what's going through your mind and that you're not feeling so hot about yourself and that it is affecting how you're feeling in your relationship, and ask them if they're willing to support you in that journey, and give that a try first and see if it changes how you feel within your relationship too. Because again, good relationships are really hard to come by, and once you've ended your relationship only for you to later determine that your unhappiness or unsettledness had everything to do with you and your own internal battles and nothing to do with your partner, your relationship, it can be really hard to reconcile and come back from that. So just think really deeply about the sources of your unhappiness and if it's worth trying to work on those things first while also keeping your relationship intact. Okay, my loves, this was just a more broad general overview of this question of whether or not ending your relationship is the right decision. And the answer is there really is no right or wrong decision, but hopefully this video at least gave you some things to consider before ending your relationship. And I just think it's worth thinking really thoughtfully and deeply about it before you do, because obviously there's another person's heart on the line here as well. I would love to hear your thoughts and stories and experiences, so please share with me in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you all next week.
Tell me what was in that stuff you gave me. I think I like it. In fact, it made me high.